Hey guys, let's talk about the current anti-work movement and the ideas by the so-called Great Resignation. One unexpected movement that emerged in the face of the recent pandemic is a new subreddit community known as Antiwork, and also the concept of the Great Resignation. Antiwork currently has over 1 million members on Reddit and is still rapidly growing. It is described as a community of people who desire to end work completely, and it is a place to push back against employers and for people that want help with their own job-related struggles. Some of the common topics discussed are toxic work cultures, applying to jobs and never hearing back from companies, unfair treatment at work, and the lack of a decent work-life balance. This is a trend that was mainly started by younger workers, such as those in Generation Z, and other people who were recently forced out of their jobs. As an example of the power of this organized movement, a couple of months ago, there was a coordinated move planned and executed on subreddit Antiwork to flood the company Kellogg's hiring portal. This occurred when Kellogg announced it would begin to replace the 1,400 striking factory workers. Outraged at this, people basically spammed online applications that ended up overwhelming their hiring platform system, which resulted in Kellogg finally reaching an agreement with the workers after an 11-week strike. This rising movement against working in the conditions that were designed over the past couple of decades has been amplified by the pandemic, especially as low-wage workers were labeled as essential, but they still weren't getting the proper compensation, considering the risk they were exposing themselves to. On the other side, many people from an older generation are viewing this movement as a collective group of young, lazy, and unproductive people that have a sense of entitlement, and that they're just not willing to work hard for their wages. Another concept is the Great Resignation, which is a phenomenon that describes the record number of people who have either left their jobs or are still leaving their jobs throughout the pandemic. It started at the beginning of the pandemic when the global job market was full of uncertainty and anxiety, which resulted in massive layoffs. Millions of people lost their jobs because people were concerned over their own health, and many small or large businesses did not know when they would be able to reopen again, and they did not want to have to pay for employees to sit at home and wait. The resignation rates are the highest among mid-career employees, and the industries that were hit the hardest include the retail, hospitality, food service industry, and the healthcare industry. As many people either quit or experienced layoffs from their jobs last year at record rates, many of them no longer have plans on returning to those jobs. Perhaps adding fuel to this movement is that the actual number of people with low-wage jobs has increased since the Great Recession, as the salaries that support a middle-class life have dramatically decreased. Now, for white-collared workers, the pandemic has afforded many new benefits, such as the ability to work from home, greater flexibility, and a more pleasant work-life balance. In my experience, I was working a federal government job in Washington, D.C. before the pandemic began, and prior to March 2020, most of our employees were only allowed to telework 1 day a week. The other 4 days a week, we were expected to wake up early, get on the train, and work in the office. However, after the pandemic, nearly all government workers began teleworking a full 5 days a week from home, and it has been like this for over a year. The method in which we worked changed. Everything that was previously done with paper and ink signatures moved to a digital format. But productivity did not decline. In fact, most workers became happier and more productive. This newfound freedom to work at home affords people more of a pleasant work-life balance. Instead of commuting, workers now have more time to live their lives. It allows parents to drop their kids off at school, to be more involved in their child's life, develop a hobby, engage more with their community, and even sleep longer hours, among other benefits. It will be difficult to return to the status quo after this transition from working in an office to teleworking from home. In fact, from what I heard recently, when government workers return to the office, it will only be for 1 or 2 days a week, and the rest of the time they will still be teleworking from home. And it's just not the federal government, but many private companies are considering the teleworking options to provide a greater work-life balance to all of their employees. But consider that not all jobs are able to be performed by teleworking, such as food server, bartender, medical worker, and trash collector, among others. So, will there be a disparity between two classes of workers? a group that stays home, and a group that must report to their employer's location? Will this possibly lead to more individuals joining the anti-work movement? In my view, the main structure supporting the current anti-work movement, along with the Great Resignation, are the pre-existing social support systems, such as Social Security and unemployment benefits. Without these programs, much of the unemployed workers will be reliant on their families for financial support. A lot of people have different views on this topic. In fact, there are currently political movements that call for increasing social support programs, and other movements which oppose any future taxation or expanding programs that the national budget cannot afford. Which side do you feel is right? Would you ever consider joining the anti-work movement? Let me know down below. Regardless of what ends up happening, the next few years should definitely be interesting. Well, that pretty much wraps up the video on anti-work and the Great Resignation. If you have any questions or comments, or if you feel like I missed something, please leave that down below. Also, you can always send me an email. If you like this video, please click that like button and click subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.